Hi everyone, Ann Gomez of Clear Concept here. Today we're talking about delegating and specifically assigning work up front to kick off the delegating process. Now, a lot of us are so busy, and that's the reason why we're giving work to other people. And so it's very easy to just flip an email to someone and say, hey, can you take care of this? And sure, for simple tasks that they've been involved in and that they've been doing in the past, no problem, that works. But for anything that's more complicated or new, or the task is new, or the delegating relationship is new, we absolutely need to put in a little bit more time up front when assigning work. As the saying goes, you either pay now or pay later. And if you don't assign work properly up front, you'll be making up for that time in the back end. So what does it take to assign work effectively as an exceptionally terrific delegator that you either are or have the potential to be? It's really 5 key things that you want to address. So the first is what? What are you delegating? We want to be crystal clear what the outcome looks like. If we just say, hey, can you work on this to someone else? Then who knows what direction they'll take that in. We want to be very articulate about what the outcome looks like, what success looks like, what's not in scope, and really any context or background that they need to help support them. The second, of course, is who is working on the task. Now, I'm a big believer in single point of responsibility. Of course, we all want to surround ourselves with a team, and we'll always be reaching out to people for support and for assistance, but we always want to be clear on who's primarily responsible for the task. If we have not clearly identified who's responsible for the task, then we tend to get this can happen where I thought you were taking care of it, or 2 people are working on it, which is redundant. And I think back to my early days of delegating, and I used to say things like, okay, let's work on this. Let's both work on this, which I totally meant, can you work on this? But they could very easily have interpreted that as I was going to lead that. So I had to learn to be very clear on, can you own this specific piece? So the next thing we want to be very clear on articulating is the why. Why are we asking them to do this? And the key with the why is 2 things. We want to link the task up to a higher purpose. And the more we get into the weeds, the more it's easy to lose sight of the higher purpose. So we always want to go back to that higher purpose, right? I think back to the janitor at NASA. There's a great story of how John F. Kennedy is touring NASA, walking down the hall, sees a janitor and introduces himself, asks him his name and says, what's your job here? And so as the janitor is changing a light bulb, he says, my name is Bob. I'm making his name up, but my name is Bob, and my job is to put a man on the moon. And I think what Bob meant is I'm putting a person on the moon. But what I love is how Bob was crystal clear that his task, this tiny, minute task, linked to the higher purpose. So we always want to link to the higher purpose. The other thing with respect to the why is we want to think about what's in it for them. We want to put ourselves in their shoes. I call that the WIFM. What's in it for me? And again, in my early days of delegating, I remember delegating to someone saying, oh, I'm too busy and I don't like this task. Can you just take this off my plate for me? Which is something I think we can all relate to when we delegate. That is a valid feeling. But my friend and my colleague called me on it, and she said, Ann, that's a terrible way to delegate. What you should say is, this is your sweet spot. This is absolutely one of your strengths and what you bring to the team. And I think you're the best person to work on this task. And that is so important to tap into their level of mastery and their own sense of purpose, because that really does truly drive our motivation. Okay, so the 4th thing we want to identify is the how to do the task. If you have more experience than the person you're delegating to, then you absolutely want to share your words of wisdom, share some of the pitfalls you've run into in the past, share some documents that might be of help. But there's this trepidation about micromanaging that people are very wary about. So how do you know whether you're micromanaging or being of assistance? Well, obviously there's a wide continuum here. And so there's really 4 factors that you should keep in mind when you are providing upfront guidance and assistance throughout the project. And those 4 things are their level of experience, right? Obviously, if they're newer to this type of work, you want to provide more support. Their level of engagement as well. So if someone is busy, involved in many other things and not really engaged in your work, then you probably want to be a little bit more hands-on. The project risk as well will dictate your timeline, and the project urgency will also dictate the amount of support you provide. And the final thing you want to make sure you define upfront is the when. The last thing you want to say is it's no rush or do it on your own timeline, because deadlines drive productivity. So we absolutely want to set a deadline. You could say, hey, can we meet on Friday to review your progress, right? It's not kind of being a dictator about the deadlines, being very collaborative. So there you go. 5 things to make sure you incorporate into every upfront assignment of work. Wish you all the best. If you like this, please leave a comment below. Like us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and join our community. I look forward to connecting with you more.